It means I must put Mother through more hardship, making her push herself harder to curry greater favor with Fang Chen, so we can gather the Hell Abyss crystals faster. Fang Chen looked at the other party with speechless exasperation and asked, "You're not leaving?" He paused, then waved a helpless hand and said, "Fine. Once I've dealt with the heavenly realm, I'll come back to handle your family of 4 together." Withdrawing from the spatial mirror, Fang Chen finally let out a soft sigh of relief. Those who needed to be dealt with had all been taken care of now. Next, it was time to settle the unfinished business. Just then, he suddenly caught sight of someone sitting quietly atop a distant rooftop. The person wore a light yellow long robe with black hair gently drifting in the night breeze. A slender, lonely silhouette bathed in the water, like moonlight, appearing so cold and desolate. It was exactly the Zhenyan Venerable. She hugged her knees with both hands, her chin slightly raised, silently gazing at the moon in the sky, lost in a daze. Fang Chen took all this in, and couldn't help but let out a soft sigh. Silently, he instantly teleported, and quietly sat down beside her. Zhenyan Venerable was abruptly startled awake. She turned her eyes, and when she saw it was Fang Chen, she leaned against him with utter naturalness and softly asked, "How goes your cultivation?" Fang Chen took one of her hands, gently kneading it in his palm, and said in a low voice, "Everything is ready. We only await the dawn." Zhenyan Venerable's fingers, slender like tender scallions, slowly threaded through Fang Chen's fingers, tightly intertwining with his, and she whispered her exhortation, "Come back." Her voice faltered, carrying a hint of irrepressible vulnerability, as she continued, "If I lose you too, then I will be all alone in this world." A long hesitation flickered through Fang Chen's eyes. In the end, he released Zhenyan Venerable's hand. With a turn of his palm, he produced a radiant, iridescent Void Feather Mantle and gently draped it over her shoulders. Zhenyan Venerable was utterly puzzled and asked blankly, "What is this?" Fang Chen pulled her deep into his embrace, kissed her forehead, and said, "This is the Angel Clan's Void Feather Mantle. Once you wear it, you can freely traverse the void." At this point, his voice deepened, and he instructed her word by word, "Put this on and go find the Great Venerable Xingyuan." Hearing this, Zhenyan Venerable's delicate body trembled violently. Her pupils gradually widened, and she cried out involuntarily, "You knew what I was thinking." Fang Chen merely held her even tighter and said in a low voice, "How could I not know? Although your body is beside me, when have you ever truly been happy? In your heart, you carry guilt toward the Great Venerable Xingyuan, worry over his unknown fate, and even more, a longing for familial affection. I don't need to look to feel all these emotions." He took a deep breath, as if shedding 1,000 Jin burden, and said slowly, "I prepared this feather mantle for you long ago. Find an appropriate chance, put it on, and leave the central continent. I am setting you free." Even before going to the Hell Realm, Fang Chen had already perceived Zhenyan Venerable's feelings. He also deeply understood that her heart had never been with him from beginning to end. Parting was an inevitable outcome. Zhenyan Venerable stood frozen on the spot, her heart fiercely battered by the sudden, mountainous, tsunami-like surge of immense emotion. She had never imagined that Fang Chen, who was always occupied with countless affairs, had been silently watching over her from behind all along. Even less had she imagined that the knotted entanglements hidden deepest in her heart had long ago been seen through by him. And now, he himself had fitted her with wings capable of flight, preparing to let her fly into the distance. But whether she would return from this departure was far from certain. "What if I don't come back?" Zhenyan Venerable stared fixedly into Fang Chen's eyes and asked in an extremely complicated tone. What she yearned for most was to return to the Great Venerable Xingyuan's side. But if the Great Venerable Xingyuan could never return, would she truly abandon him and come back to Fang Chen? Fang Chen slowly raised his head to gaze at the bright moon above. A flash of barely concealable pain crossed his eyes, and he said in a low voice, then, "May the rest of your life be filled with gentleness." His voice drifted as if falling into distant memories, and he continued, "Don't be like before, staying alone by the moon-washing lake, friendless, kinless, without laughter or joy." Having said that, he lowered his head to meet Zhenyan Venerable's eyes and confessed frankly, "I cannot resolve your heart's knot. All I can do is let you go. Tomorrow's battle is fraught with life and death uncertainty, so I can only give you this feather mantle in advance." He gazed at her, his eyes full of earnest care, and spoke slowly, each word clear, "Take good care, Zhenyan. That beautiful female venerable who protected me desperately from the Xia Venerable when I was weak. I will always remember her." Zhenyan Venerable's thin, fragrant shoulders began to tremble intensely in quick, rustling shakes. Under the clear moonlight, glistening teardrops like pearls slipped silently down her cheeks. She had never liked Fang Chen, never. Even after the two had the reality of a married couple, she merely did not resent him. Even when Fang Chen launched the Grand World Vow, preserving the Great Venerable Xingyuan's soul from annihilation while his own hair turned white with age, she was only so moved had she regarded him as family. That liking between a man and a woman had never existed. But at this very moment, her heart truly ached. The thought of forever leaving this person who had silently tolerated her, who had personally attached wings to let her fly, and never seeing him again, made her heart feel as if were tightly strangled by steel wire. A gripping pang, accompanied by a thick sourness, instantly surged through her entire body. She abruptly clutched Fang Chen's arm, hugging it tightly against her chest, her face drenched with hot tears, cascading like rain. Fang Chen raised his hand and gently wiped her tears, comforting her. "Don't cry. Go back to the Great Venerable Xingyuan's side." Zhenyan Venerable could no longer restrain the bursting dam of her emotions and wept aloud. "But I can't bear to leave you." She clutched Fang Chen's lapels tightly and cried out, "I don't want to lose you, Fang Chen." Fang Chen was stunned on the spot. Was this perhaps the first time Zhenyan Venerable had shown such emotion? In the past, she had always acted aloof and distant. Though she occasionally called him husband, one always felt that her heart was empty. A gratified smile appeared on Fang Chen's face as he sighed with emotion. "Finally, I've managed to leave a little place in your heart. It truly wasn't easy." Zhenyan Venerable held Fang Chen with desperate tightness, knowing all too well in her heart that she, just like the fairy Yunqiang, had hopelessly fallen. That thread of heartache in the depths of her heart, a feeling she had never known before, was the clearest marker. Clang, clang. Just then, the evil sword on Fang Chen's back began to vibrate violently, as if accumulating towering fury. Chen Jing, within the sword's body, had likewise sensed the change in Zhenyan Venerable's heart at this moment. That master of his, who was normally beyond worldly concerns, had actually wept and spoken the words "can't bear to." This meant she had truly developed feelings. And this was precisely what Chen Jing could never obtain. Zhenyan Venerable looked over with tearful eyes and asked in a thick, tear-choked voice, "What is wrong with this sword?" She distinctly remembered that on the battlefield last time, when the two had embraced, the sword had made the same strange noise. Now, as she took the initiative to develop feelings for Fang Chen, it stirred again. Fang Chen hesitated for a while, but ultimately chose to be honest. "It is Chen Jing." He took a deep breath and recounted in full detail the whole story of how he had become his spirit tool. A complex look immediately surfaced in Zhenyan Venerable's deep eyes. No wonder the sword could not bear to see Fang Chen doing well, nor could it bear to see her getting along with Fang Chen. Fang Chen said in a low voice, full of apology, "I've made you uncomfortable." But Zhenyan Venerable clung tightly to Fang Chen's arm, pressing her whole body into his embrace like a kitten seeking shelter and warmth. She shook her head forcefully, her eyes devoid of the slightest sympathy, and said coldly, "He betrayed you twice. Ending up like this now is purely his own doing." If it had been any moment before now, knowing that the sword contained Chen Jing, perhaps there would still have been a trace of master-disciple bond in her heart that she could not bear. But now her heart and eyes were filled entirely with Fang Chen. Clearly it was that familiar face and that familiar aura, yet at this moment they made her eyes light up and her heart race with sudden passion. When she recalled how Chen Jing had treacherously betrayed Fang Chen, nearly causing him to die at the hands of Heart, Sin Venerable, and the two Star Giant King, only a fierce, unadulterated hatred blazed in her heart. So thinking, a subtle stirring rose in her heart, and she asked, "You said just now that this sword can autonomously upgrade its quality based on his emotions." Fang Chen answered truthfully, "Indeed, it is on the verge of advancing into a quasi-realm artifact now." He then shook his head helplessly and added, "However, I have experienced too many grand spectacles, and he has long grown accustomed to them. Lately, he hasn't produced any significant emotional fluctuations. Its advancement to a quasi-realm artifact likely remains far off in the distant future." Hearing this, Truth Venerable lightly pressed her red lips together, as if resolving herself. Raising her gaze, she said, "Then, what if I offer myself to you willingly?" Yeah. Fang Chen froze on the spot, momentarily failing to grasp her meaning. Give what? But when he looked down and saw the swiftly spreading crimson blush on her fair face, his heart instantly hammered out of control. He quickly said, "Truth, don't force yourself. Even without the quasi-realm artifact, I can still fight tomorrow." Truth Venerable's icy, beautiful face flushed scarlet in an instant, the alluring blush creeping all the way to her earlobes, the shyness in her eyes seeming almost to condense into water. Her voice carried a faint tremble of extreme nervousness. I am not forcing myself. Right now, I do this willingly, from the bottom of my heart. Truth Venerable never lies. Everything she says reflects the truest thoughts of her heart. It was the first time Fang Chen had seen Truth Venerable like this, and his heart hammered ever more fiercely. The wicked sword quaked violently once more, waves of fury radiating from it. Truth Venerable awkwardly imitated the usual manner of Cloud Dress Fairy, extending her snow-white arms and lightly looping them around Fang Chen's neck. Nervously, she breathed out like an orchid, "My body and heart now belong to you." With her glistening, water-bright eyes, she gazed directly at Fang Chen and asked in a voice as faint as a mosquito's, You, do you not want me?" She then added in a trembling, lingering call, "Husband Tilda." These final words, husband, were tinged with a touch of awkward, unpolished coquetry, forming a striking contrast to her usual aloof and indifferent demeanor. That single call completely ignited the long, suppressed fiery passion within Fang Chen. He abruptly extended his arms, pulled her slender waist firmly into a tight embrace, and flipped over, pressing her heated, supple body beneath him. His burning gaze bore into her as he spoke with overbearing ardor, "Yes, of course I want you." In Truth Venerable's mist-filled eyes, entire galaxies were reflected. Unable to restrain herself, she placed her hands on Fang Chen's shoulders, her voice trembling uncontrollably from nervousness. "Please be gentle." Fang Chen could no longer suppress the surging tide of emotion. With a sharp rip, the crisp sound of fabric tearing, pieces of clothing fluttered like scattering butterflies. Under the tranquil moonlight, two long, estranged souls finally merged completely, body and mind, amid a piercing cry that cleaved through the heavens. The long, dormant wicked sword suddenly erupted with unprecedented violent trembling, emitting fierce, clanging echoes. Boundless, black, evil Kai soared skyward, tightly enshrouding the two figures and the roof together in a solid cocoon. The wicked sword's resonant hum continued unceasingly, reverberating for a long time. Until the next day, when the moon set and the sun rose, warm sunlight spilled across the roof, piercing through the thick veil of evil Kai. Fang Chen gently draped a skirt over Truth Venerable, covering her enchanting body, now adorned with love bites like strawberry marks. Lying feebly in his arms, Truth Venerable could barely summon the strength to speak, appearing fragile and delicate. "So this is lovemaking. No wonder Cloud Dress and the others are so addicted and reluctant to part." Although the two had once shared a conjugal bond before that had been a forced union under Bai Luo's madness with no real feeling at all. This time, they had devoted themselves wholly, body and soul, so the experience was utterly different. Truth Venerable was still panting lightly, but her tone was unusually firm. "I've decided, after finding my father, I'll try my best to bring him back." She paused, then cast a liquid, tender gaze at Fang Chen. "If he cannot return, then I will come back to your side. I, too, follow in Cloud Dress Fairy's footsteps. Now I can never bear to leave you." Fang Chen's heart blossomed with joy at her words. He planted a firm kiss on her cheek. "Good, then your husband awaits your return." Truth Venerable softly added, "No rush, I'll leave after the expedition to the Heaven Realm. By the way, quickly check if this wicked sword has upgraded its rank." Only then did Fang Chen recall, and he hastily dressed. Together they approached the wicked sword, standing not far away, only to see that this 10-foot tall blade was now completely different from before. Previously, the wicked sword had a broad, rough body, a clumsy, heavy greatsword. Now, though still 10 feet tall, its blade had become slender and sleek, like a willow branch swaying in the wind. The blade was covered with intricate, profound patterns, and auras of pressure far surpassing top-grade spiritual artifacts slowly radiated outward. A delighted glint appeared in Truth Venerable's eyes. "It's a quasi-realm artifact. I've heard that quasi-realm artifacts possess a portion of the power to disregard the laws of heaven and earth. I hope this sword can lend you strength, my husband." Fang Chen's eyes brimmed with joy as well. This was his very first quasi-realm artifact, and even more, one he had personally upgraded through his own efforts. His gaze suddenly sharpened, and he barked, "Sword, come." With a delightful, ringing hum, the wicked sword instantly flew into his grasp. A bone-chilling cold immediately coursed through him, while faint surges of law power lingered and swirled in his palm. A thought flickered in Fang Chen's mind, and he uttered a single word, "small." With a sharp whoosh, the wicked sword instantly shrank to a foot in length. And this was the innate law of the Kuei's realm wicked sword, the ability to freely transform its size. When combined with the sword material's inherent property of releasing evil Kai to continuously inflict damage, a single slash would wield exceptionally formidable power. Gazing at the small sword in his hand and then at the rising sun on the horizon, Fang Chen's eyes grew fierce and piercing. Today I sever all grudges, young emperor, I am coming. Hand in hand with Truth Venerable, he strode boldly out of the heavenly secret pavilion. Behind him, the wind suddenly sounded like blades. One after another, figures burst out from various secret chambers, following in his wake. The pavilion master of the heavenly secret pavilion smiled and declared in a resonant voice, all members of the heavenly secret pavilion accompany Deputy Pavilion Master Fang to this appointment. Fang Chen cast his gaze around. Familiar faces of sect members had gathered, all ready to accompany him to young Emperor Mountain. A soaring heroic spirit surged in his heart, and with a mighty roar he proclaimed, Sword Aura traverses the 9 provinces, stirring storms across 10,000 miles, onward. Ascend to Tianju, and behead the young emperor. A train of figures closely followed him as they stepped into the clouds, journeying toward the distant horizon. 10,000 tribulations, Sacred Hall. Heart Demon Venerable, clad in thunder and lightning, rushed into the skies and let out a long howl. Spark Venerable faces a life war. Death battle. How can the 10,000 tribulations? Ion Sacred Hall stand by idly. Members of the 10,000 tribulations Sacred Hall, follow me to Tianju. White Horse Temple. Abbot Puguang led the monks into the clouds, his voice booming like a great bell. Amitabha, the monks of White Horse Temple stand with Spark Venerable. 3 pure mountains. Elder Feng stood suspended in the air, his voice hoarse yet unwaveringly resolute. Strong warriors of 3 pure mountains follow this elder. Should Spark Venerable fall, we will protect him with our very blood. East Sea. The Lost Pearl Demon Empress, clad in a pink long skirt, stood upon the sea surface, gazing into the distance and murmuring softly, Sworn brother, you must win. South Sea. Old Dream Demon Empress stood atop a seashell, floating on the sea's surface. The sea breeze blew, pressing her black dress tightly against her body, outlining her pair of long, slender, perfectly straight beautiful legs. She clasped her hands before her chest, tightly holding an ancient pendant, and whispered softly, I offer 100 years of my lifespan in exchange for your safe return. May the heavenly Tao bear witness to this vow. The sky suddenly roared with a thunderous boom, and an invisible will descended from above, instantly turning the pendant in her palm to dust. Indeed, an unknown power had actually answered her vow. The 3 God sect, the 7 great orders, and over 50 clans all stirred like surging clouds and wind, hastening together toward Tianju. Fang Chen arrived at the Imperial Observatory. By Xin and Elder, 6 paths were already waiting before the Zhu-class teleportation array that led to Tianju. Elder's 6 paths slapped his chest emphatically and laughed heartily. Boy Fang, you fight with all your might. Between you and me, this old bag of bones will definitely kick the bucket first. As long as I'm not dead yet, no matter how great the peril, you need not fear. Go all out and kill that arrogant young emperor. Fang Chen said nothing, merely giving his arm a silent, firm pat. As for who between him and the 6 Paths sage would die first, the Heavenly Secrets Elder did not state explicitly. He only said that the Heavenly Ears Bodhisattva would fall, and indeed that Bodhisattva was the first to perish. Both of them would inevitably meet their tribulations, one after another. By Xin's clear, bright eyes now also turned this way. On her back was the middle, grade spirit sword given by Fang Chen, the Hearten, lightning sword. Complementing her deity transformation, domain of the path of justice, this sword brimming with righteous energy seemed tailor-made for her. Be careful, Bai Xin's words were brief, but within her usually emotionless eyes, a trace of fluctuation stirred. Fang Chen nodded slightly and smiled faintly. I will, Miss Bai. Under their gazes, Fang Chen stepped into the teleportation hall. The other end of the array was Heaven Prefecture. At this moment, the young emperor should also be watching the Heavenly Observatory, awaiting Fang Chen's arrival. Just as he was about to activate the state-level teleportation array, it lit up first, and a beautiful woman in a long black dress hurriedly teleported over. Fanner, your godmother nearly returned too late. She took out a large handful of jade talismans, within which were engraved the domains of various great sovereigns. Among them were the domains of familiar great sovereigns, such as the Myriad Arms Great Sovereign and the Ice Heart Great Sovereign, as well as the domains of many unfamiliar great sovereigns. They were located throughout the 9 provinces of Middle-earth, not necessarily familiar with the Compassion Mirror Great Sovereign, yet she had begged all of them for these. The difficulties she faced in doing so were known only to her. The compassion mirror Great Sovereign stuffed all these jade talismans into his hands. Take all these domain jade talismans. Also, take these protective treasures and make sure to use them without hesitation. She then brought out many more talismans, formation flags, and protective armor that she had somehow obtained. All were rare protective treasures, each of different styles, clearly collected from different people. Heaven only knows what price she paid to persuade them to part with these. Fang Chen couldn't hold them all with 2 hands, so he could only scoop them all up into his arms. The weighty feeling pressed from his palms straight into his heart. The one he was to fight to the death was her own son, yet she was now hurrying about on his behalf. In this world, those who wished him well without ulterior motives were already few, and the compassion mirror Great Sovereign was one of them. Fang Chen's voice was slightly hoarse, his heart tangled in 1,000 emotions. Godmother, I will be fine. If he was fine, that meant the young emperor would not be. No matter which of them died, it would cause the compassion mirror Great Sovereign grief. Just then, the teleportation array trembled again, and a figure of a refined man flickered into view. It was the Fang Mountain first-rank pavilion master. His gaze swept over, and without warning, he saw the compassion mirror Great Sovereign. His step out of the array noticeably paused. Composing himself, he then pretended nonchalance and spoke. Boy, I made it in time. Take it. He opened his palm, and a lump the size of an egg, formed by many entwined laws, came into Fang Chen's view. If counting the one from the Fang Mountain first-rank pavilion master, this was the law power of a full dozen sages. This virtually gathered a sliver of law from every sage in the entire Middle-earth. By calculation, it equaled the full strength of a one Calamity Realm sage. This was sufficient to activate the orange hue of the gourd once, enough to capture any deity transformation, Great Sovereign. Fang Chen solemnly accepted it and whispered, "Thank you, Pavel, Senior Nameless." He glanced at the compassion mirror Great Sovereign, quickly corrected himself, and hastily poured all these precious law forces into the primordial heaven, imprisoning gourd. Soon, the orange area lit up. With this, it could be considered a life-saving trump card. But what was the young emperor's real name? The compassion mirror Great Sovereign had once called him Fenger, but what was his surname? Fang Chen glanced at the compassion mirror Great Sovereign. He couldn't just ask her directly, could he? After pondering for a moment, he stowed the gourd away, cupped his hands in salute, and said, "I'm off first." The compassion mirror Great Sovereign's eyes were full of worry. Despite having stuffed Fang Chen with a pile of treasures, she still had not a shred of confidence in her heart. She bit her lip tightly, her gaze filled with resentment as she looked toward the main island of the Heavenly Observatory, thinking bitterly in her heart, was there really no one would step forward to stop them? Since the day the young emperor issued the challenge, a full 10 days had already passed. The Grand Libationer of Taikang had actually never stepped forth to mediate. Could it be that they truly had the heart to watch the 2 most outstanding young talents of Middle-earth slaughter each other like this? Just as her thoughts surged, a faint, aged sigh came from deep within the main island. Immediately, she saw the Grand Libationer of the Grand Taikang Prefecture, a horsetail whisk in hand, his form shifting from illusion to reality, silently appear before her. He shook his head, a helpless expression on his face. How can we stop it? Ma'am, have you forgotten that back during the ancient giant war, how the Heaven Prefecture battlefield was won? At these words, the compassion mirror Great Sovereign's expression immediately darkened, and the bitterness in her heart thickened in an instant. The Fang Mountain first-rank pavilion master also sighed deeply from the side. If I could stop it, I would have done so long ago. Alas, the young emperor carries a world-destroying killing weapon, and fears no sage whatsoever. No one's dissuasion is of any use. Whenever he recalled the information he had gathered about the young emperor these days, he still felt a shock that shook him to his core. That year during the ancient giant war, the Dark Shura clan suffered a crushing defeat and fled, and the powerhouses of Heaven Prefecture pursued while riding the wave of victory. No one expected that the Celestial Realm's Dark Nine Hells Shura Emperor had been hiding all along within the heaven, reaching Black Pillar. He suddenly emerged and launched a large-scale devastating attack against the unprepared powerhouses of Heaven Prefecture. That was the Nine Hells Shura Emperor, an existence renowned as invincible beneath the saints. If that strike had fully landed, it would have been enough to crush and annihilate all the pursuers from Heaven Prefecture. This included even the Buddha Lord, Sage Thunder Annihilation, Sage Cold Moon, as well as hundreds of deity transformation experts and thousands of nascent soul powerhouses. Just as this annihilating strike was about to devour everything, the young emperor made his move. He came forth alone, and at the cost of severe injury, activated a world destroying heavy treasure he carried. That heavy treasure not only saved Heaven Prefecture from the brink of destruction, but also wounded the 9 hells Shura Emperor on the spot, cowing him into retreat. This was why his ranking on the meritorious stele was even higher than that of the star, Abyss, Great Sovereign. That was because by the strength of a single person, he saved Heaven Prefecture, the most flourishing region of Middle-earth, and preserved over half of Middle-earth's combat strength. And this piece of intelligence, the Fang Mountain first-rank Pavilion Master, absolutely dared not tell Fang Chen. He was deathly afraid that Fang Chen's mental state would be shattered, causing him to lose his fighting spirit on the spot. It was precisely because the young emperor possessed such a trump card that he cared not for the dissuasion of any sage in Middle-earth. The compassion mirror Great Sovereign's eyes showed deep worry, her voice tight. Fang Chen will die. The strength Fenger has after awakening this time is far deeper than you imagine. The Grand Libationer of the Grand Taking Prefecture furrowed his brows and said in a deep voice, as long as he isn't utterly annihilated on the spot, body and soul, we will find a way to protect Fang Chen. The foremost of the 9 steles should not be buried here in vain. Speaking of Heaven Prefecture at this moment on young Emperor Mountain, Sage Thunder Annihilation folded his arms across his chest, silently watching the direction of the Heavenly Observatory, a trace of helplessness showing in his eyes. He turned toward the throne forged from thunder and asked in a low voice, young Emperor, why must you fight a life and death battle with Fang Chen? If it is for the meritorious deeds of the 5 elements, Divine Lord, I can step forward and ask him to concede those merits to you. As soon as the words fell, the young Emperor, who was sitting cross-legged on the thunder throne, suddenly opened his eyes wide and 2 bolts of lightning burst from his pupils. He said coldly, does what I, the young Emperor, desire require the charity of others? Sage Thunder Annihilation sighed helplessly. Once the young Emperor's temper flared, not even 10 oxen could drag him back. He softened his tone and tentatively persuaded, but your life and death battle will hurt the compassion mirror Great Sovereign the most. The thunder force in the young Emperor's eyes surged even more fiercely, and he said in a frigid voice, this meddlesome woman, the sooner she disappears, the better. If she dares interfere, kill her as well. With that, he promptly closed his eyes again. As the lightning light in his eyes faded, the surrounding light instantly dimmed, completely submerging his figure into the darkness of the Grand Hall. On the other side, the Moon Palace. Silver Moon Great Sovereign clenched his fists, his gaze constantly darting between the teleportation array of the Heavenly Observatory and the distant young Emperor Mountain. 4 whole days had passed since the Moon Sovereign was captured. In these 4 days, he had not rested for a moment. His mind was filled with the image of the Moon Sovereign docilely leaning against Fang Chen, his arm around her waist as he brought her back to the Heavenly Secrets Pavilion. Each recollection stabbed his heart like needles, causing unbearable agony. He desperately yearned to know whether the Moon Lord had been violated by Fang Chen these past days. Fortunately, this torment of agony would finally end today. Today marked the decisive battle between Fang Chen and the young Emperor. He longed for Fang Chen's death, hoped he would be hacked into 10,000 pieces, wished for his total annihilation, body and soul. Once Fang Chen died, the Moon Lord would return to his side. The Silver Moon Grand Lord clenched his fists, his face twisted with ferocity, and growled lowly, Fang Chen, I'll see how you die. Beside him, the Palace Master of the Moon Palace still wore a face full of sorrow. She sighed faintly and thought to herself, I only hope that Fang Chen's strength can hold on until the sages step in to rescue him. In the current Middle Land, probably not a single sage wished to see Fang Chen fall. Once he truly fell into danger, there would be plenty of sages to act on his behalf. But the problem was, the young Emperor's power was terrifying and unparalleled. Would he give the sages of the Middle Land a chance to rescue him? And at this moment, from the Medicine God Hall and the Buddha realm, low sighs could also be heard. One mountain cannot contain 2 tigers. These 2 most dazzling paragons of the Middle Land, sharing the same era, were bound to collide in a heaven-shaking clash. Whichever fell would cause the entire Middle Land to lose its luster. Meanwhile, in the void beyond the realms, the powerhouses from the myriad heavens and 100 realms successively reached the barrier of the Middle Land, overlooking the vast heavenly province from above. A female sage with the ability to eavesdrop on the 10,000 realms revealed an amused expression. Oh, rather than early, better to come at the right time. The young Emperor of the Middle Land is about to engage in a life war death battle with the one hailed as primordial first, Fang Chen. Upon hearing this, the eyes of the sages from the various realms flickered slightly. If it were an ordinary battle of the deity transformation stage, they would naturally have no interest. But since one side was the renowned young emperor, and the other was Fang Chen, whose name had spread across the 100 realms recently. It became a bit interesting. Someone hesitantly spoke. I rather hope Fang Chen wins. If he dies, from whom will we buy the true steel? Win, another sneered. Have you never heard the rumors about that young emperor? I've only heard that his strength rivals that of young Masters Yang, Yanwang, Xiao, Liu Baianhuang, and the others. All beings invincible beneath the sages. That's not particularly rare, is it? It seems you truly haven't heard that rumor. It's said that when the young emperor was born, he already grasped a trace of the Thunder Dao law. At these words, everyone was shocked. Grasped at birth. How is that possible? The power of a law. How could an infant's body withstand it? Not necessarily impossible. I've also heard that the Skyward Grand Sage obtained a drop of Thunder God's blood by chance in the Myriad Evil Source. If he infused the Thunder God's blood into the fetus and nurtured it from within, it might create such an infant. The powerhouses of all realms were all horrified and visibly moved. Thunder God's blood. In this world, are there truly gods? Just then, a patch of mist drifted over, within which loomed the vague shadow of an enormous beast. The great beast sneered, and here I thought it was some extraordinary rumor. It's just stale old news. The Skyward Grand Sage's cultivation of infants with the Thunder God's blood is not something he's done only in recent years. The old man has been attempting it for centuries, experimenting on at least 10,000 fetuses. All other fetuses and mothers couldn't endure it and died on the spot. Only a woman named Lion Jing in the Middle Land withstood a trace of the Thunder God's blood and successfully gave birth to the young emperor. However, mere mortals coveting the blood of a deity, that mother and son won't live much longer unless they rapidly elevate their realm so their bodies can withstand that divine blood. Upon hearing this, the crowd was even more shaken. Someone couldn't help but murmur, the Skyward Grand Sage is truly ruthless. Even though sages see all living beings as ants, experimenting on over 10,000 fetuses is too cruel. Killing 10,000 lives is merely the rage of a sage, but torturing and killing 10,000 lives is a different matter entirely. The Middle Land is truly a sinister place. Every now and then, an exceptionally ruthless figure emerges from it. Ruthless in every sense of the word. Among the crowd, Yanwang Xiao, wreathed in holy light, whose face should have been refined and elegant, was twisted into the grimace of a ferocious ghost. Without any concealment, he released killing intent and hissed lowly, Fang Chen, you had better die at the hands of the young emperor, or else falling into my hands will be far worse. At this moment, in Heavenly Province, white clouds leisurely unrolled, the wind frolicked joyfully, and sunlight was bright beneath the azure sky. Yet the area centered around the Imperial Observatory had already plunged into an aura of desolate killing. Countless gazes converged on the Imperial Observatory, settling upon that small teleportation island connected to the Taking Grand Province. The two strongest deity transformation cultivators of the Middle Land were about to face off in a life or death duel. One was the young emperor who cowed the present age, the other was Fang Chen, sharp and radiant. Of this pair of twin jewels of the Middle Land, who exactly was the true king, who was the true #1 deity transformation in the Middle Land? The answer was about to be revealed. Right at that instant, a dull buzzing trembling was heard, and a spatial vibration violently spread from that island. The provincial level teleportation array activated. The people from Taking Grand Province had arrived. Countless powerhouses instantly soared into the air, their gazes like lightning fixed upon the teleportation hall on the island. Reflected in their pupils, a black-clad youth with his hands clasped behind his back slowly stepped out. He's here. Fang Chen has come. He wore a white jade crown, and his long black hair fell neatly behind his back. Those bright eyes shone with a calm and indifferent luster. A gentle breeze stirred the hem of his robe and lifted a strand of his long hair, but it could not stir the slightest ripple in his eyes. An aura of absolute composure, as if even if Mount Tai collapsed before him, his face would not change, washed over everyone. This was a temperament forged through countless trials, through the ancient giant wars, through the battles of the Hell Realm, time and time again. He tread upon the void, ascending step by step into the skies above Heavenly Province, standing at the very heart of the Middle Land's most prosperous center, drawing the attention of all the powerhouses of Heavenly Province, no, of the entire Middle Land. Because, from the islands of the Imperial Observatory, unceasing spatial fluctuations that soared to the heavens erupted. Sages of the 9 provinces, deity transformation cultivators, nascent soul experts, surged in like a tidal wave. They all wanted to witness together the mightiest battle of deity transformation in the Middle Land, under the gaze of a multitude. Fang Chen raised his eyes to gaze into the distance, towards the great hall suspended in the sky, with the sun, moon, and stars behind it. His gaze shot into the hall like a bolt of lightning, and he bellowed with a clear voice that spread in all directions. Fang Chen of Taking Grand Province, here to answer the battle. Young Emperor, step forth and meet your death. This was the voice of a king. It echoed powerfully through the endless heights, resounding without end. The world fell silent, all things lost their voice. Even the howling wind came to an abrupt halt. As if the entire world had frozen, every gaze converged on young Emperor Mountain, on that cloud-wreathed hall that the young Emperor had guarded for 18 years. They waited, waiting for the response of the other king. All they heard was a heaven-shaking boom, and around young Emperor Mountain, lightning suddenly flashed and thunder roared. Thunderbolts of myriad colors shot out from young Emperor Mountain. At first there were 10, then 100, and after 3 breaths, thousands upon thousands. In the blink of an eye, young Emperor Mountain seemed like the source of 10,000 thunderbolts, inhaling and exhaling endless lightning, illuminating the heavens and earth of evenly province with a riot of colors. It was as if, within that deep and dark young Emperor Mountain, a hidden thunder god stood guard. And a cold, domineering, supercilious voice slowly emanated from young Emperor Mountain. You finally stand before me. Taking Fang Chen. The karma between the two had been tied when Fang Chen cultivated the void, flowing thunder force at Mount Boundary. Back then, Fang Chen was merely at the core formation stage. Now, with the momentum of having defeated the Silver Moon Grand Lord, he stood before the young Emperor. During this time, the young Emperor had commanded the Venerable Heartsin to kill him, had ordered 2 deity transformation experts from young Emperor Mountain to ambush him in Kanghai region, and had even personally pursued him to kill. But none succeeded. Now, Fang Chen had shattered all obstacles and become a worthy rival of equal strength. A palpable sense of intertwined destiny was now plain as day. Fang Chen slowly raised his hand, and a meridian within him brimming with thunderous energy surfaced plainly, the void, flowing thunder force. He murmured to himself, the void, flowing thunder force is the cause of everything. Today let the void, flowing thunder force be the conclusion. Strike, the karma between us shall be severed today with a single blow. As if in response to Fang Chen's void, flowing thunder force, a perfect and complete power of the void, flowing thunder force likewise emanated from within young Emperor Mountain. 2 individuals who had cultivated the void, flowing thunder force to perfection, were about to decide life and death. Within young Emperor Mountain, the young Emperor's icy voice echoed once more, as you wish. Before the words had faded, another thunderous boom erupted. The sky, feeling thunderbolts above young Emperor Mountain, violently burst apart, then instantly coalesced into a highly corporeal figure of lightning. That figure's form and visage were identical to the young Emperor's in every way. Disdaining to let his true body take action, he would use only the power of thunder to battle Fang Chen. The young Emperor's thunder avatar approached with hands clasped behind his back, saying, "Let me see what level the ant of yesteryear has grown to now." Wherever he passed, space fissured inch by inch, revealing spider web-like cracks into the void. This was the power of a great exalt. His footsteps grew faster and faster, soon becoming a blur, and finally akin to teleportation. In the blink of an eye, he arrived right before Fang Chen. The terrifying thunder power within the thunder avatar erupted like a volcanic eruption, scorching the surrounding heaven and earth with dense black cracks. A casual strike alone carried the might of a great exalt. The Golden Scale Great Exalt, Myriad Arms Great Exalt, Ice Heart Great Exalt, and the Lord of the Star Cluster Mountain all felt their hearts tremble. Even they would need to exert their full strength to block this strike, not daring the slightest negligence. And what of Fang Chen? Would he have to unleash the 6-fold unity from the very start to contend against it? Whether the spirit transformation cultivators or the sages silently watching from the clouds, all gazes fixed onto Fang Chen, not daring to shift by a hair. And Fang Chen, too, made his move. Surrounded by the origin of wind, he had long since grasped the trajectories of all things around him. Even the Thunder Avatar's teleportation was fully within his control. Unhurried, strange flames surged within his raised palm. It was a fusion of 2 flames, one black and one white, a sacred flame shaped like a little angel, and a yin flame shaped like a little asura. Fused into one, they burst forth with a terrifying heat, capable of annihilating those in the 4th decline of heaven and man. However, as a crimson meridian, seemingly flowing with lava, emerged within Fang Chen's body, the flame's power surged wildly once more. Evidently, under the augmentation of the void flowing fire force, the flames might underwent a qualitative transformation. Thrusting his palm forward, he met the teleporting thunder avatar with a ferocious slap. The yin, sacred dual flames gushed out, incinerating all the lightning arcs released by the thunder avatar into nothingness. At the same time, the thunder avatar was engulfed by the yin-yang dual flames. The thunder avatar exploded with a boom, and the yin, sacred flames swelled in response. Two forces, each sufficient to slay a great exalt, clashed fiercely. Finally, with a deafening boom, the thunder avatar burst into scattered arcs of lightning, while the yin sacred flames were blown to pieces. Those lightning arcs whooshed back to young Emperor Mountain, and the yin, sacred flames likewise returned to Fang Chen's palm. In this exchange, neither side gained the upper hand. Among the fire worship sect's disciples, Fairy Qianjiao cried out with uncontrollable excitement, "That's the 1,000-charm true fire art I passed to him. I taught him. Good heavens, he's actually cultivated it to the point of being able to contend against the 5th decline of heaven and man." Everyone else was similarly shaken. The battle between Silver Moon, Great Exalt, and Fang Chen had led everyone to mistakenly believe that his strongest technique was sixfold unity, temporarily transforming into a Great Exalt. Unexpectedly, beyond that, he still possessed such a terrifying fire, path divine ability. From within young Emperor Mountain came the young Emperor's cold sneer. To survive a strand of my thunder power without dying truly the makings of a Great Exalt. In that case, it is worth this young Emperor personally taking action. As his words fell, young Emperor Mountain trembled violently. From the majestic hall set against the sun, moon, and stars, a youth slowly emerged, clad in robes of thunder within. Black hair dancing wildly and disdainful eyes, like a thunder. Our god, overlooking the mortal world. He strode out from the darkness of the great hall. The thunderbolts of heaven and earth, as if paying homage to their master, converged and wove into a staircase beneath his feet, extending all the way before Fang Chen. This display secretly shocked the Great Exalts. Could this still be called a thunder, path divine ability? It should already fall within the realm of laws, shouldn't it? Yes. The sages in the clouds couldn't help but take a sharp breath, their bodies gradually tensing. The young emperor was about to personally take action. A thunder avatar forged from a single strand of his thunder power already possessed such strength. If his true body acted, wouldn't it be like crushing dry weeds and smashing rock and wood, instantly reducing everything to ash? They felt immense pressure over whether they could save Fang Chen in time. The young emperor approached with hands behind his back, his expression growing colder. He raised his index finger and said coolly, "As a reward for reaching this young emperor's presence, I grant you death by this finger." With that, he pointed gently toward Fang Chen across the vast sky. Die. In that instant, a pure white bolt of lightning, devoid of any impurity and utterly silent, shot toward Fang Chen. The sages in the cloud's pupils contracted sharply, and they could barely restrain themselves from intervening. Because this bolt of lightning was compressed from 10,000 thunderbolts, the purest force of annihilation, a cultivator in the 5th decline of heaven and man, even if merely grazed by it, would be instantly detonated through their entire body. But Fang Chen's expression remained calm. He brought his palms together and said mildly, "Sixfold unity." The heavenly abyss heart shuddered, and 9-colored tribulation lightning surged out, coalescing around him into a towering 100 jang tall thunder form Fang Chen. The aura of the 5th decline of heaven and man erupted forth. The young emperor commented indifferently that technique defeated Silver Moon Great Exalt. Not bad, but it cannot block a single finger of this young emperor. Fang Chen's face remained expressionless as he said evenly, "Who said this is all?" Within his body, the void-flowing thunder force erupted forth. Since the void-flowing thunder force could augment any single part of the celestial thunder 6 divisions, then the sixfold unity should logically be augmentable as well. With a sharp, searing crackle, the void-flowing thunder force erupted and flooded into his entire body. That 100 jang tall 9-colored thunder body instantly radiated an intensely blazing 9-colored brilliance. Almost simultaneously, that white lightning bolt pierced through the void, leaving a terrifying, long black tear in nothingness as it hurtled toward him. Fang Chen abruptly raised his hand, actually blocking that white lightning bolt head, on with his palm. The terrifying, explosive force made his arm tremble. But immediately, he exerted sudden force and clenched his 5 fingers. With a muffled pop, that violent white thunder was actually crushed in his bare hand, instantly exploding into thousands of thunderbolts that burst outward. Heaven and earth were instantly illuminated in flickering light, as if doomsday had descended. Fang Chen's 9-colored thunder body stood unwavering amidst the radiance of 10,000 thunderbolts, his colossal silhouette flashing light and dark like a thunder god descending to the world. The same flashing light cast itself upon everyone's faces, revealing expressions of shock and horror. Iceheart Great Exalt lightly covered her small mouth, yet still couldn't hold in her shock, exclaiming shakily, he caught that with his bare hand. Fang Chen, after sixfold unity of the celestial thunder 6 divisions, what realm is he at now? Golden Scale Great Exalt also drew a sharp breath, his face full of astonishment as he replied, beating you would be absolutely no problem. All the Great Exalts present were deeply astounded, a strike they believed they could never withstand under any circumstances. Fang Chen had crushed bare-handed. A ripple finally stirred in the young emperor's all-supreme gaze. He narrowed his eyes and snorted coldly to actually catch a finger of this young emperor head on. Seems I underestimated you. Fang Chen swept his large hand, and the 10,000 exploding thunderbolts were instantly wiped away, restoring clarity to heaven and earth. Feeling the celestial thunder 6 divisions aura double after the augmentation of the void flowing thunder force, Fang Chen clenched his fist and sneered, surprised. You only knew to vie with me for the void flowing thunder force, but never realized it could enhance thunder, path divine abilities. In your hands, it simply disgraced the legacy of the 5 elements god monarch. Fang Chen and the young emperor's purposes in cultivating the void flowing thunder force were utterly different. Fang Chen had nothing and thus explored every possible use of the void-flowing thunder force to the utmost. The young emperor possessed the whole world. The void-flowing thunder force was merely a tool for monopolizing the karmic merit of the 5 elements god monarch. How could he treasure it? The young emperor threw his head back and let out a long, mocking heh-heh laugh, hands behind his back, his laughter dripping with derision. Interesting. To think the day would come when I'd be lectured face to face by a peer. But a mere spirit transformation legacy of the 5 elements god monarch, is it worthy of this young emperor's earnest cultivation? You know nothing about me. A piercing crackle rang out, and the young emperor's entire body bloomed with thunderous light. His eyes, nostrils, mouth, hair, and even every single pore erupted with terrifying pale lightning, illuminating 100 jang radius around him. From afar, it looked like a white thunder, light giant as tall as the 6 divisions of heavenly thunder. Its form and facial features were exactly the same as the young emperor's. The 200 Jang Thunder Giants, one shimmering in 9 colors, mysterious and majestic, the other pale white, dominating in all directions. The young emperor's gaze turned cold. Transforming into a white thunder giant, he teleported over in an instant, his terrifying thunder fist wind smashing down with a roar. Fang Chen activated the origin of wind, precisely captured its trajectory, raised his 9-colored thunder fists, and ferociously countered head on. A deafening thunderclap erupted, and both were pushed back. The young emperor snorted coldly and said disdainfully, "You think you're worthy of fighting me?" Immediately after, his figure dissolved into afterimages as he teleported again to attack. Fang Chen remained unfazed and shouted sharply, "Young emperor, you're nothing special." His 9-colored thunder body also teleported to meet the attack. The 2 colossal thunder figures vanished from everyone's sight. But the next moment, terrifying roars erupted from above the sky curtain. Vast sheets of 9-colored tribulation, lightning, and pale thunder light poured down like torrential rain. Looking closely, the visible sky curtain was like porcelain about to shatter, densely covered with countless black cracks. The 2 thunder giants would appear the instant they collided, and then clash again in teleportation moments later. The violent thunder collisions crushed everything around them. Great sheets of thunderlight continuously fell from both combatants, like a world-folding deluge of countless layered heavy rain. The entire land of Tianju was shrouded by the 2 terrifying pressures. All the experts were completely silent, staring at the dazzling and suffocating scene before them, their hearts trembling with shock. No one had imagined that Fang Chen could be this powerful. Even more, no one had imagined that a young prodigy of the same generation could fight the young emperor to a standstill. Outside the realm, sages from numerous worlds nodded repeatedly in approval. One of them stroked his beard and praised, "The young emperor truly lives up to his reputation, standing shoulder to shoulder with Lord Xiang, Yan Wangxiao, and the others. Such combat strength is truly extraordinary." Another person shook his head and added, I think even more extraordinary is this Fang Chen. That he can fight the young emperor to this extent is truly unbelievable. You have to understand, the young emperor has been famous for a long time, while Fang Chen only rose to fame recently. Another sage nodded and said, given time, he will certainly become a young sage. At that moment, a cold snort rang out. Have you all forgotten that the young emperor hasn't fought seriously at all? Yan Wangxi gave a faint snort and said, if someone who has mastered a divine bloodline's strength is limited to just this, it would be incredibly disappointing. Above Tianju, with a violent blast, the 9-colored thunder giant and the pale thunder giant were each pushed back. The thunder light on both of them had dimmed slightly. Fang Chen stood tall, thunder light surging around his body, and asked coldly, young emperor of Tianju, is this all you have? The young emperor gazed at Fang Chen and let out a long peal of laughter. Ha ha ha, interesting. Since I achieved the Tao, my peers have all been like ants. Few could withstand even 3 of my moves. To have endured in a contest for so long, and in my most proficient Tao of thunder no less, you are the first. I admit that the 5 elements divine Lord's void flow, quintessence has some merit, but before me, it's still not worth mentioning. He took a deep breath, his expression suddenly turning deadly serious. Threads of killing intent unapologetically surged out. I've had enough fun. It's time to end this. Before your 6 unity fusion fades, while you are at your strongest, I will cut you down under my Tao of thunder. He raised his hand high, and an ancient aura faintly emanated from within his body. It was as if some nameless existence that had ruled the ancient era and grasped the supreme laws of heaven and earth had awakened. Heaven and earth trembled from the leakage of that aura. The surrounding space could no longer endure and shattered completely, revealing vast expanses of nothingness. The void force that devours all things swept in, sweeping away the atmosphere in all directions. But as it passed the young emperor, it could not shake him in the slightest. He stood like an ocean, calming divine needle, ignoring the void force. Amidst the violent trembling of heaven and earth, the sky curtain overhead abruptly darkened. 10,000 thunder dragons converged within the black clouds, forming a single thunder eye. Threads of barely visible thunder chains descended from the thunder eye, coalescing in the young emperor's palm into a sword woven from chains, a thunder sword. Chains symbolize order, and law is a part of order. The young emperor had activated the thunder god bloodline and mobilized the Tao of thunder's law. Within the sky curtain, the sages of the central plains could no longer remain seated. The Grand Libationer of Tianju said with a grave expression, we must act. This strike has already surpassed the scope of the divine transformation realm. The master of the first grade pavilion of Fang Mountain and the artisan sage also wore solemn expressions. For they knew deeply that a sword of law thunder was powerful enough to wound sages like themselves, let alone Fang Chen. The Grand Libationer of taking great state nodded and prepared to make a move, raising his horsetail whisk. But Fang Chen remained unafraid and shouted sharply, it is time to end this, young emperor, sword, come. A melodious hum rang out as the 3-foot evil sword flew into his hand. Awe-inspiring evil Kai surged forth, condensing into 100 Zhang sword halo. The young emperor dismissed it with disdain and sneered, a quasi-realm artifact, not enough, bring out your strongest Dharma treasure, for you have only this one chance left to strike. Fierce anger blazed in Fang Chen's eyes. The Void Flow Thunder Force and Void Flow Fire Force surged simultaneously within him. He said coldly, to kill you, the inheritance of the 5 elements divine lord is more than sufficient. Void Flow Thunder Force, Void Flow Fire Force, activate. He opened his mouth and spat, spraying the 2 forces onto the evil sword. The thunder and fire Void Flow forces merged together, giving birth to an entirely new power that seared through space and melted the world barrier. Void Flow Thunderfire. The evil sword was wrapped in Void Flow Thunderfire, like a blazing war sword, radiating the might of destruction. Fang Chen twirled the sword in a flourish. With the sharpness of a quasi-realm artifact combined with the might of Void Flow Thunderfire, he sliced through the world barrier as easily as cutting tofu. From the sky curtain, the land, and beyond the realm, gasps erupted in unison. For slicing open the world barrier was something only sages could accomplish. The might of this sword had also reached the level of a sage. The 6 unity fusion, the quasi-realm artifact, and the 2 void flow forces had together erupted with a terrifying power no one had anticipated. The ancient name, 5 elements divine lord, violently shook everyone's hearts. A void flow quintessence created by someone at the divine transformation stage was actually this terrifying. The young emperor's pupils constricted, but an excited smile spread across his face. Heh heh, good, very good. Now this is a great enemy worthy of being killed by me, the young emperor, personally, Fang Chen of Taikang, prepare to die. The law thunder sword he had raised high slashed down with a thunderous roar. Fang Chen gripped the evil sword with both hands, fury burning in his eyes. Young emperor of Tianzhu, go die. Ever since the day he began cultivating the Void Flow Thunder Force, the young emperor had been like a sword hanging over his head, pressing down on him day and night until he cowls. He barely breathed. He had even put the Void Flow Thunder Force aside, not daring to touch it again. That piercing pressure, as if a dagger pressed against his back, had tormented him for far too long. Later, it was again this young emperor who dispatched Venerable Xin nigh all the way to taking great state, determined to annihilate him. Because of that, he had hidden and fled, narrowly escaping Venerable Xin Nai's pursuit time and time again. But in the end, Venerable Xin Nai had sacrificed his own life to save Fang Chen. If not for the young emperor, how would Venerable Xin Nai have ever set foot in great state? How would he have died? The root of all this was entirely because of that one man, the young emperor. At this thought, the killing intent in Fang Chen's eyes abruptly condensed into a single beam. Gripping the evil sword, he roared, enlarge. The evil sword responded by instantly expanding 100-fold, transforming into 100 Zhang, long sword shrouded in rolling thunderfire as it cleaved through the air and slashed down. Between them, a complete and final resolution had to be made. At that moment, both in heaven and on earth and beyond, everyone's heart suddenly constricted. In a life or death clash at the sage level, who would survive and who would die was truly impossible to determine. Perhaps Fang Chen would die under the law thunder sword, or perhaps the young emperor would be cut down before the evil sword. In short, of these two jewels of the central plains, one was certain to die today. But just as their annihilation swords were about to strike, Fang Chen's bosom suddenly grew hot. A domain talisman from Great Venerable Xingyuan activated of its own accord, and immediately a vast spatial force fiercely pushed the two in opposite directions. At the same time, a beautiful woman in a long black dress abruptly appeared at the very center of their clash. Tears were already streaming down her face like rain. As she watched the two annihilating attacks descend, a sorrowful smile appeared at the corners of her lips. Fang Chen's pupils shrank drastically, and he cried out in a hoarse voice, "Godmother." To be at the heart of their decisive battle at this moment, she would be obliterated, body and soul. Great Venerable Xingyuan looked at Fang Chen through tear-filled eyes, then at the young emperor, and smiled a tragic smile. "I cannot stand by and watch you slaughter each other. Fang'er mother is trading her own life for Fang Chen's life. I hope you will spare him." It turned out she had long been prepared to sacrifice herself. This was all she could do. Boom! The enraged strike of the two had already descended, and the terrifying might instantly swallowed her voice and figure whole. At the critical moment, Fang Chen desperately deflected his blade. The long sword sliced past her, cleaving a void rift hundreds of Zhang long across the heavens and earth. But the young emperor did not hold back. There was not a trace of pity on his face, only bone-chilling indifference and disgust. "Useless wretch, only holding me back. Whoever blocks me dies. You can die together with Fang Chen." The law thunder, sword in his hand, slashed down mercilessly. The terrifying chains surged with the law power that could annihilate all things, instantly engulfing Great Venerable Xingyuan completely, causing her figure to vanish within a long void fissure. Fang Chen stood rigidly in place, watching Great Venerable Xingyuan, who had now completely disappeared, his mind erupting with a thunderous roar. His godmother was dead. She couldn't bear to see either Fang Chen or the young emperor die, so she chose to use her own life to end their great battle. The godmother, who had sincerely treated him as her own child, died just like that. And even died under the sword of her own biological son, the young emperor. She had clearly loved and protected the young emperor so much, rushing about everywhere to find the meritorious virtues needed for him to break through to the sage realm. Why could the young emperor harden his heart and kill her? Why? Fang Chen's hands clutching the demonic sword trembled uncontrollably. The sorrowful cry in his heart transformed into a surging fury that nearly burst his chest apart. "You beast!" Fang Chen's eyes were bloodshot, and a towering killing intent surged around him. He originally held no deep killing intent toward the young emperor, only anger from being oppressed all along. But at this moment, he only wanted to end the young emperor with his own hands. grind his bones to dust and scatter his ashes, destroying both body and soul. Die, Fang Chen roared, and the demonic sword in his hand swelled to 1,000 zhang in size, cleaving through layers of void and slashing down fiercely. The young emperor's lips curled slightly, and he coldly said, finally, some peace and quiet. From now on, no one will be buzzing in my ear anymore. Now it's time to send you on your way. Boom! The Law Thunder Sword swept upward fiercely, and the terrifying chain Phantoms and the demonic sword enveloped in void, Flow Thunderfire, collided violently in midair. Crack! A trembling sound, like the fracturing of the world barrier, instantly spread throughout the entire heavenly province. The very heaven and earth centered around the two were directly shaken into a vast void zone spanning 1,000 li. The land of the heavenly province, beneath its influence, immediately crumbled and disintegrated under the devouring suction of the void force. Countless pieces of land, structures, and living beings were all sucked into that void. Terrified screams, hopeless wails, and furious roars instantly filled the space between heaven and earth. The world was instantly thrown into great chaos. The Grand Libationer and the many sages of the Central Plains changed color drastically, decisively unleashing their laws to block the void force, thus stabilizing the land and saving countless lives. The survivors of the catastrophe fled in terror toward the distance, their cries merging into a continuous din. No one expected that a contest between two divine transformation cultivators would ultimately evolve into a great battle at the sage level, resulting in such devastating consequences. Not only them, but even the sages who were frantically lending aid were also caught completely unprepared in their hearts. The battle between the two had long since exceeded their control. Even more terrifying, their battle was still ongoing. One iridescent and one white thunder phantom, one black and one chain, two world, destroying giant swords, fought all the way from the 10,000 lie sky of the Central Plains straight into the boundless void. With every collision, an overwhelming sage-level majesty erupted, shattering the meteorites and even the floating land along the way completely into dust. The various sages watching from beyond the realm also revealed shocked expressions on their faces. Jiang Yishan was protected behind his family's sage elder, his face filled with disbelief. Is this still a battle at the divine transformation stage? Though both were at the heavenly man 3 declines, he felt that between him and Fang Chen lay an unfathomably deep chasm. The sage from the 10,000 Poisons realm, his eyes full of admiration. Not yet at the sage level, but already infinitely close. Apart from the imperial body of that sage, young Master Xiang, I can't think of any great venerable in the myriad heavens and 100 realms who could display such combat strength. The key point is, this Fang Chen is merely at the heavenly man 3 declines. Once he steps into the Great Venerable realm, wouldn't he? The remaining sages also showed deep shock. Before, we only knew of the Central Plains young emperor. Now, I fear there will be another Central Plains Fang Chen in the myriad heavens and 100 realms. Other worlds might not produce one such peerless genius in several hundred years, yet the Central Plains has produced a pair at once. Could it be that the Central Plains is truly about to rise greatly? Yan Wangxi, secretly clenched his fists, murderous intent churning madly in his eyes. That human lowborn who only won first place in the ancient wilderness, hunt by trickery, had actually already reached the height of young Master Xiang. Given time, becoming a sage would be no problem at all. No wonder Xia Keoj was so devoted to him. No wonder. Gazing at the figures of Fang Chen and the young emperor locked in fierce battle within the void, a heavy gloom flashed through his eyes. He glanced down at the Central Plains sages still striving to save the living beings, then resolutely raised his hand and summoned. A long spear brimming with holy power was steady, lie grasped in his palm. Boom bang. The 9-colored colossal thunder shadow and the pale thunder body clashed fiercely in the void, both erupting with astonishing killing intent. Between them, it was a matter of either you die or I live. Fang Chen attacked madly without regard for the cost. At this moment, only one thought remained in his heart. Kill the young emperor. Kill the young emperor. But the 9-colored tribulation thunder within him was already nearing its limit after several consecutive fierce battles, and could not hold out much longer. By then, he would fall into a passive, beaten-down position. Thoughts racing, the judgment brush materialized out of thin air. He opened his mouth and bit down on the brush tip. While continuing to fight, gripping the demonic sword tightly with both hands, he had already begun to painstakingly outline the character death. Just as he was fully focused on dealing with the young emperor, however, a bone-piercing chill suddenly swept through his entire body, making him shudder uncontrollably. That was a warning sign of approaching danger. Someone was attacking him, only to hear the surrounding sages burst out with furious reprimands. Yan Wang Xiao, what do you think you're doing? Stop at once. You're launching a sneak attack, despicable. But they saw Yan Wang Xiao's golden wings behind him beat fiercely. To him, this void was like a fish in water. The other sages attempted to intervene, but being within the void, they had no teleportation ability and could only rely on speed to dash over and intercept. However, the angel race was innately a flying race. He easily bypassed everyone, reaching the battlefield directly as fast as teleportation. From behind Fang Chen, he thrust out a true sage, level strike. With ferocity in his eyes, he bellowed, "Die, you low-born scum." This strike came too suddenly, too treacherously, and too swiftly. Fang Chen, who was giving his all in a life and death struggle with the young emperor, was completely defenseless. The instant the holy spear stabbed forth, Fang Chen felt his entire body turn ice cold. This strike was enough to shatter his body and even grind away his soul, destroying both body and spirit. But at this life for death instant, the killing intent in the young emperor's eyes abruptly skyrocketed, far stronger than during his death battle with Fang Chen. Insolence, the Law Thunder Sword that had originally been swung at Fang Chen suddenly changed direction, chopping down toward the ambushing Yan Wang Xiao. The latter's expression changed drastically, and he immediately retracted his spear, hastily raising it overhead to block. The Thunder Sword struck heavily upon the long spear, instantly triggering a series of blinding law lights that shook the surrounding primordial Kai into ceaseless turmoil. Yan Wang Xi violently jerked his arm, forcibly shaking off the Thunder Sword's law power. His face dark, he snorted heavily. "I was helping you kill Fang Chen, so why are you attacking me instead?" The young emperor looked down on him from above, his tone scornful to the extreme. "Who do you think you are?" He paused slightly, then sneered disdainfully. "The person I, the young emperor, want to kill. Do I need you to sneak attack for me?" Scram! Having escaped death, Fang Chen's eyes abruptly surged with immense killing intent. This beast, back during the ancient wilderness hunt, had pretended to be a good person, then ambushed Fang Chen and killed him. Fortunately, he had on him Keoge's golden feather, having set up precautions in advance, which prevented that villain from succeeding. Now he even takes advantage of the life and death struggle between Fang Chen and the young emperor to shamelessly launch a sneak attack. Fang Chen's eyes blazed with icy killing intent, and he gritted his teeth, bellowing, "I'll kill you first." Before his words faded, he spun around abruptly, his sword wreathed in sinister, baleful light, slashing fiercely. The young emperor's eyes also flickered with cold, murderous intent. After glancing around, he snorted coldly, "Meddle in my affairs, and that is the consequence." With that, he once more grasped the Law Thunder Sword, and accompanied by deafening, thunderous roars, he lunged straight at Yan Wang Xiao. Yan Wang Xiao's sneak attack not only failed, but also made him the common enemy of both Fang Chen and the young emperor. Truly a case of trying to steal a chicken only to lose the baked rice. Seeing both of them attacking him at once, his face turned icy cold. He spat out through clenched teeth, "You don't know what's good for you." He sneered and added, "Perfect. As a newly promoted archangel, I haven't truly battled anyone yet. Today, I'll use you two lowly mortals of the Central Plains as practice." He suddenly gripped his long spear, and strands of law madly coiled around the shaft. In an instant, it was imbued with a whirl, shattering ferocity that far surpassed the young emperor's law thunder sword. Yan Wang Xiao bellowed, "Scram!" The long spear swept out horizontally, and the incoming law thunder sword and that malevolent sword were all knocked flying in a single sweep. The young emperor's law thunder sword instantly disintegrated, turning into a sky full of lightning. And Fang Chen's evil sword was also shaken loose from his grip, tumbling wildly through the air. Even more terrifying, the spear's residual power continued without pause, piercing straight through their lightning bodies. A muffled thud sounded, and the young emperor's hundred, Jiang pale lightning form crumbled thunderously. Then another muffled sound, and Fang Chen's already thin colored lightning body finally gave way, dissipating like mist and clouds. Yan Wang Xiao let out a contemptuous laugh, his face brimming with disdain. "Two mere divine transformation realm cultivators. Did you really think you were sages?" He declared haughtily, "No matter how capable you are ultimately just figures beneath the sages. Killing you is no different from slaughtering dogs." His gaze suddenly locked onto Fang Chen, murderous intent roiling in his eyes. "During the primeval hunt, you stole my military achievements, and when you came to the Central Plains, you stole my woman." Fang Chen, who gave you the courage? Today I will make you vanish into ashes and smoke." He abruptly raised his long spear and hurled it viciously at Fang Chen. A sharp, piercing whistle split the air, and the void trembled violently. A vast, boundless sage might coalesce into an unavoidable fatal strike, descending directly upon Fang Chen. Fang Chen couldn't even trace the spear's trajectory with the origin of wind. He could only feel bone-chilling death enveloping him. However, at this critical juncture, a law thundersword, 1,000 zhang long and incredibly condensed, with a pressure far exceeding that spear, came crashing down with the force to cleave the void. The void was cleaved with a violent shudder. The flying spear was struck precisely, emitting a piercing wail and sending out chains of law. Yet before this new law thundersword, those chains were mercilessly crushed like foam. The spear was utterly exposed to the sword's edge. A crisp crack rang out, and it was instantly cleaved and exploded. Yan Xiao, whose spirit was linked to the spear, could no longer suppress it. He opened his mouth and spat out a large mouthful of blood, which only transformed into 5, colored blood after drifting far away. Yan Xiao was horrified beyond belief, staring at that overwhelmingly menacing law thundersword. How is this possible? He had thought that the preceding battle had already shown the young emperor's peak strength. But he never expected that the young emperor had not used his full power from the start to the finish. At this moment, the young emperor's black hair danced wildly, his eyes arrogant and disdainful, his entire body brimming with an unparalleled domineering aura that defied heaven and earth. He spoke coldly. A mere newly promoted archangel dares to act so arrogantly before this young emperor. The various sages fixed their gazes and looked carefully, only then realizing in horror that on the young emperor's skin, golden meridians had surfaced, writhing and roaming ceaselessly across his body. Within those meridians, something ancient and terrifying seemed to flow faintly. Someone involuntarily swallowed, the clear gulp sound reflecting an indescribable shock within. Before, the young emperor had merely unleashed a portion of his thunder god bloodline. Now, this was the true, overbearing manifestation of the thunder god bloodline. With a cultivation base at the 5 decays of heaven and man, he forcibly suppressed a newly ascended sage. Fang Chen was only able to fight until now because the young emperor held back. If the young emperor had gone all out earlier, Fang Chen would never have stood a chance. In the end, it's still the thunder god bloodline. How could mere mortals challenge it so casually? Wait, what is this aura? Suddenly, an icy aura that sent chills down the spines of all sages present rapidly spread through the void. Following the source of the aura, they saw Fang Chen holding a brush, slowly writing a large death character in the air. His face seethed with killing intent. He tapped the tip of the brush on the blood, red death character, then fiercely pushed it toward Yan Xiao, roaring, "Die, don't get in my way." The death sentence brush had been filled with more than half its ink for the first time. The written death character was crimson and solid, as if blood might drip from it. A terrifying essence unique to the laws of heaven and earth faintly emanated from that death character. It was as if it was not a written word at all, but a life-reaping talisman in the hands of King Yama. As Fang Chen tapped his brush, the death character swiftly flew towards Yan Xiao, its size ballooning from palm, size to a sky-covering canopy in the blink of an eye. The death sentence brush, an artifact of the Hell Realm from 10,000 years ago. And it's fully activated. He actually possesses such an ultimate killing weapon, capable of erasing even saints. He had also been keeping a trump card all along. Yan Xiao's face changed drastically, and he gasped in a low voice, "You had such a killing weapon. Why didn't you say so earlier?" How could he dare to resist? The death character before him sent a bone-chilling, deathly stillness through his entire body. He hurriedly flapped his golden wings, attempting to flee. However, that death character only grew faster. At first, it seemed to be pushed slowly, but then it became like a teleporting canopy. Yan Xiao's vaunted speed was utterly meaningless before it, and within a few short breaths, the death character caught up. The colossal blood, red death character mercilessly passed through his body, then completely contracted, converging entirely within him. A scene that made the sage's scalps tingle appeared. Yan Xiao let out a blood-curdling scream. The golden wings on his back rapidly turned black and rotted. His snow-white skin also blackened and stank. His internal organs all rotted into pus, gushing out from his 7 orifices. His eyeballs burst first, turning into black sludge that splattered out. His entire body, as if it had died for countless ages in an instant, decayed and collapsed on the spot. All was silent. Everyone felt a chill run down their spines. A mighty sage, yet unable to withstand such a casual strike. Fortunately, Yan Wangxi was no ordinary low, ranking archangel in the heavenly realm. At the critical moment, a golden feather on his chest suddenly shattered, transforming into blazing holy light that forced the invading death character out strand by strand. His decaying body then began to slowly recover from the brink of destruction. But before he could fully recover, a slender black evil sword, 10,000 zhang long, abruptly pierced through his chest. Fang Chen, his eyes bloodshot, let out a hoarse roar. Die. With a powerful swing of his arms, and amid Yan Wangxiao's agonized howls, the evil sword slashed diagonally across his chest, nearly cleaving him in two. Fang Chen, Yan Wangxiao, shrieked horribly, a mix of terror and fury. He never imagined that Fang Chen truly possessed the power to kill him. With just this little strength, you dared to interfere in this young emperor's decisive battle. Scram! On the other side, the young emperor gave a contemptuous snort, and the Law Thunder Sword materialized in his hand, slashing down fiercely. All color drained from Yan Wangxiao's face, and he cried out in panic, "I'm not interfering anymore." Yet the young emperor still mercilessly struck down with his sword. A deafening boom resounded, and under the bombardment of the Law Thunder Sword, Yan Wangxiao's barely recovered body was blasted into minced chunks on the spot. Only a shattered skeleton remained, desperately shielding a precarious soul entity that was on the verge of collapse. The newly promoted archangel, under the combined force of Fang Chen and the young emperor, had his physical body shattered. The surrounding sages gasped in shock, utterly unable to believe the scene before them. Were these two fiends from the Middle Land really only at the soul formation stage? Yan Wangxiao, terrified and frantic, flapped his wings, now rotted down to the bone, desperately trying to flee. Fang Chen gave a cold snort. "You think you can escape?" The evil sword in his grasp extended to a length of 10,000 zhang, the blade still bearing a faint wisp of ethereal lightning fire, and struck viciously at the skeleton. A thunderous bang echoed as Yan Wangxiao's skeleton could no longer withstand the blow, shattering inch by inch under the sword's strike. Only Yan Wangxiao's soul remained, fleeing in panic with eyes full of venomous hatred, vanishing into the depths of the void after a few flickers. A spiteful roar echoed out, "Fang Chen, you destroyed my archangel's Tao body. I swear irreconcilable enmity with you." Fang Chen did not pursue, instead coldly surveying the surrounding sages, his voice icy. "Who else dares to stand in my way? Step forward, all of you." The sages of the encompassing heavens felt their scalps tingle, hurriedly retreating in panic. Even the newly promoted archangel Yan Wangxi had been beaten to a fleeing remnant soul by these two, who would dare interfere now. Seeing no one dared step forward, Fang Chen gripped the executioner's brush, his bloodshot eyes fixed dead on the young emperor, grinding his teeth in fury. Fang Chen's eyes nearly burst from their sockets as he let out a shaking roar. "Your turn, beast. Die!" Before his voice even faded, he clenched the brush and swiftly sketched the eerie, grim character death. The young emperor sneered arrogantly. "You're the one who should die. Let's see how many times you can use that executioner's brush." He raised a hand, and the fearsome thunder sword of law manifested once more. That thunder sword, carrying overwhelming destructive momentum, slashed viciously towards Fang Chen. Yet the young emperor's body suddenly swayed for no apparent reason, and a trickle of blood seeped from the corner of his mouth. The golden veins protruding from his body became increasingly bright and dazzling to the eye. His skin visibly reddened all over, and streaks of blood began flowing from his 7 orifices. An uncontrollable expression of agony spread across his face, as if he were enduring some immense pressure. Fang Chen laughed uproariously to the sky. "You won't last many more attacks yourself. Let's see which of us dies first." He raised the brush and with rapid strokes, once more drew the grim death character and jabbed it forward. The young emperor swallowed the blood in his throat, gritted against the pain, and barked coldly, "Enough to kill you." "Annihilate?" As his thunder god bloodline continued to surge, the thunder sword of law in his hand grew increasingly unfathomable in power. With one slash, it faintly possessed the might of a strike from the two-sunned giant emperor. His strength had not even reached its peak yet. The death character and the thunder sword of law collided violently in the void. When the thunder sword of law touched the death character, it rapidly decayed. The sky-spanning death character was also slashed by the thunder sword of law, shattering layer by layer. A devastating explosion boomed out, and the death character dissolved into scattered fragments that blasted in all directions. The thunder sword of law also disintegrated, its destructive aftershocks sweeping across the 8 wildernesses. The surrounding sages' faces turned ashen. They shielded their junior disciples and shouted urgently, "Retreat." These two are insane. One's body is about to burst under the pressure of the god's bloodline. The other will exhaust his ink in a death struggle. Neither cares for their life. They fled to a distant safe zone and looked back in shock. One after another, thousand, Jiang, long thunder swords of law and blood, red death characters erupted in clash after clash within the pitch black void. The destructive shockwaves turned the area within 1,000 li around them into a forbidden zone. Any soul formation cultivator entering would instantly be reduced to ashes. Even sages risked injury. This battle had completely surpassed the level of soul formation. However, just as they had speculated, a desperate duel at any cost could not last long. At that moment, a thunderous boom echoed. The Thunder Sword of Law, having reached its peak power, finally cleaved the considerably weakened death character in two and continued slashing towards Fang Chen with undiminished force. The young emperor burst into wild laughter, blood spurting from his mouth. His violently trembling body was now crimson, as if dyed in blood. "It's over, ha ha ha." Not just his 7 orifices, even the pores all over his body were gushing blood as if a sluice had opened. Yet this still could not conceal the ecstatic joy plastered on his face. At the cost of his body nearly exploding from the god's blood, he had won. The Thunder Sword of Law instantly engulfed Fang Chen. His executioner's brush had been used many times. As the ink diminished, the power of the death character gradually weakened. In contrast, the young emperor's Thunder Sword of Law grew stronger with each strike. In the end, Fang Chen could not hold out to the last. Above his head emerged a great bell covered in cracks, barely blocking off most of the attack. But the remaining attack was still enough to claim his life. At this critical moment, a dim golden feather suddenly appeared on his chest, the very gift Keoj had given him before. The feather released a brilliant radiance, straining to block the residual attack. As the light was gradually consumed, the feather ultimately failed to fend it off completely. With a muffled bang, it transformed into a sky full of golden holy light and completely dissipated. Immediately after, the last wisp of law thunder fiercely struck Fang Chen's body. A crisp crack resounded as a hole, the size of a human head, was punched straight through his torso. He coughed up large mouthfuls of blood, was sent flying backwards, and lay on the ground, utterly unable to move any longer. The young emperor dragged his leaden steps, staggering forward. His face covered in blood, he laughed wildly. "Ha ha ha, ha 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 ha, fight me, what makes you think you could?" He raised his hand, and a Thunder Sword of Law gathered once more, ready to deliver the final blow to Fang Chen. But then a bang explosion sound his arm could no longer bear the strain and suddenly burst apart. He gritted his teeth, enduring the intense pain, and with his other hand reached out into the air to compress 10,000 thunderbolts into a long sword, gripping it tightly. He said, with a ferocious voice, "Enough to kill you." He stumbled forward, a trail of blood streaking behind him, until he stood right before Fang Chen. At that moment, Fang Chen's body was covered in lacerations, his flesh torn open, not a patch of skin intact, his life force rapidly fading. He was a man hanging by a thread, on the verge of death. The young emperor raised the thunder sword and roared sinisterly, "It's over, Fang Chen." Fang Chen was powerless to move, but the unwillingness in his heart burned like raging fire. He remembered his gentle and kind godmother, the motherly figure he had longed for his entire life but could never have, who had been ruthlessly slain by the young emperor. If he could not kill the young emperor, he would die with eternal regret. He would not rest in peace. His fighting spirit reignited, his eyes suddenly widened, flashing with murderous intent. Using the last shred of his spiritual energy, he forcibly opened his spatial storage and summoned a figure clad entirely in a black robe, wearing a number 1 mask. He let out a fierce, low roar, poison body. His soul instantly transferred into that clone. Though the body under the 5 decays of the Celestial had no magical power, it would suffice. He grabbed the evil sword from his original body's hand and lunged fiercely at the young emperor, bellowing, "Die!" A sickening squelch of a blade piercing flesh rang out. No one could have anticipated that Fang Chen, at death's door, could still unleash this final attack. Even more unexpected, he possessed a clone under the 5 decays of the Celestial, with cultivation even greater than his original body. The young emperor, caught completely off guard, had his chest viciously pierced by the evil sword. Overwhelming evil Kai and a virulent poison surged madly along the blade. His chest rapidly decayed, and the rot spread throughout his body. The blood gushing from his mouth turned into black fluid. The young emperor's arm jerked violently, and the tightly gripped thunder sword slipped and fell. He looked down at the evil sword in his chest and incredibly laughed, his shoulders shaking with laughter, emitting broken, eerie chuckles. So it turned out like this. Fang Chen's eyes bloodshot, he roared, "Apologize to my godmother before you die." An immense grief filled his heart, and scalding tears slid down. His godmother was dead, and her most beloved son would soon die too. Why had it come to this? Why? The young emperor raised his hand, gripping the evil sword in his chest tightly, and stared at Fang Chen. As soon as he tried to speak, a torrent of black fluid gushed out. He weakly uttered a few words. "Fang Chen, you have passed." Upon finishing, he threw his head back and laughed heartily, laughing with utter abandon, as if letting down a burden and achieving complete liberation. He still dares to laugh. Fang Chen, eyes filled with murderous intent, bellowed, "Die." But just as he was about to plunge the sword down, Fang Chen's original body's forehead suddenly became scorching hot. A blood-red character, long, missed and suddenly surfaced. It was the character blood that the chaotic ancient blood marquis had imprinted on his forehead years ago. This character had not appeared for a long time. Its sudden appearance now could mean only one thing: the ancient chaos blood marquis had arrived. Fang Chen's heart was violently shaken. The ancient chaos blood marquis, who had once nearly killed him from across worlds during his tribulations, had actually arrived at this moment. In the blink of an eye, his poison body decisively abandoned the young emperor who was within arm's reach, and his soul instantly returned to his body. His void flow thunder force, physical power, and divine transformation force were all utterly exhausted. But there was still one power he could activate: his domain. In his earlier battle with the young emperor, every exchange was a life or death struggle, leaving him no chance to deploy his domain. Now that the young emperor's injuries were heavier than his own, he finally had a window to use it. In his heart, Fang Chen let out a low roar. Second domain perfection. A domain surged out from the back of his head and instantly enveloped his entire body. His fading consciousness and critically wounded body, as if submerged in the fountain of life, rapidly began to recover. As soon as Fang Chen's body could move, he summoned the immortal king's indestructible bell without a word and tucked himself inside it upside down. At the same time, the third domain was activated without the slightest hesitation. The function of this domain was to convert the enemy's attacks into one's own power, acting as a form of indirect defense. He had barely accomplished this when the dark void abruptly blazed into a sea of blood, red. A blazing crimson radiance, like a fierce sun, ignited the void and expanded at an extraordinary speed. Only as it drew near did everyone see that it was not a sun of blood, but a blood-colored long spear brimming with apocalyptic might. Its spear point was aimed straight at Fang Chen. It's the ancient Chaos Blood Marquis. He wants to kill Fang Chen. Save him quickly. If he dies, who will trade with us for the non-aggression steel? The watching sages were horrified and all moved to intervene. But just then, from the depths of the void, a rough spine, shilling will reverberated, filled with boundless killing intent. Whoever obstructs this marquis shall have their world annihilated. That will reach the ears of every sage, causing their bodies to turn ice cold with dread. That was the ancient Chaos Blood Marquis, a pinnacle existence at the Three Calamities realm, invincible among all under the saints. And terrifying existences like him were numbered in 6 more. These 7 all hailed from an ancient era 10,000 years ago, known throughout the world as the 7 champions of ancient chaos. It was said that 10,000 years ago, these 7 powerhouses had each single-handedly thrown their entire era into chaos. In that tumultuous eternal space-time, they each dominated a region, their fearsome reputations renowned. Thus, later generations came to call them the 7 champions of ancient chaos. In an age where saints did not manifest, the 7 of them together were enough to annihilate the vast majority of small and medium worlds. These 7 were the most terrifying top experts among all the hundreds of worlds under the heavens. Wherever they passed, they brought heaven obscuring winds of carnage and blood and boundless slaughter. The experts from various worlds had gathered here for the sake of their own worlds, to avert the great calamity 1,000 years hence. Yet how could they dare act rashly, and instead bring a catastrophic disaster right before their eyes upon their own worlds? Thus, they hesitated, they faltered. A blood spear tore through the void, carrying the terrifying momentum of world destruction as it charged straight at Fang Chen. Inside the battered immortal king's indestructible bell, Fang Chen felt not a shred of safety. Instead, a bone-piercing chill pervaded his entire body. The shadow of death grew denser, and an unprecedented sense of alarm throbbed wildly in his heart. At this moment, he was like a guttering candle before a raging storm, utterly helpless, forced to watch as the flame of his life slowly dimmed toward extinction. The last time he had experienced such an ant-like insignificance and helpless life for death crisis was when facing the evil crow Reverend. Yet this time, it was even more despairing than when he had faced the evil crow Reverend. Am I going to die here? Fang Chen could not help but have that thought rise from the depths of his heart. But right at this moment, from the direction of the Middle Dominion, several figures shot over like startled swans. The arrivals were none other than the 9 Great Libationers and the 9 Nether Demon Venerable. The 9 Great Libationers were of one mind as they simultaneously activated the power of their laws. Their laws intermingled and interconnected, coalescing in an instant into a colossal, sky-shrouding ring that blocked in front of Fang Chen. Upon that ring, countless arcane patterns flickered in and out of existence, while chains of law shimmered faintly. With a deafening thunderclap that shook the cosmos, the blood spear brutally slammed into that ring-formed firmament. The ring firmament trembled violently, immediately being torn open with savage gashes. Wisp after wisp of scarlet bloodlight seeped through the cracks. The vast majority of the bloodlight was tightly blocked by the 9 Great Libationers, but a small portion shot directly toward the immortal king's indestructible bell. In almost the same instant, the bell emitted a sharp, ear-splitting cracking sound. The already cracked immortal king's indestructible bell could bear no more. A chunk of material suddenly broke off, revealing a fist-sized gap. Fang Chen's pupils abruptly constricted. This was a single strike from a 3 Calamities realm sage. Just the residual force that seeped through had actually shattered a piece of this damaged world artifact. Watching those threads of bloodlight filter in, Fang Chen felt as if his whole body had plunged into an ice cellar, frozen to the marrow. But at the critical moment, a giant python phantom suddenly surged, coiling around the immortal king's indestructible bell and using its body to firmly plug the hole. The bloodlight struck the phantom, knocking it much more translucent, but ultimately it was blocked. That bone-chilling cold that had soaked through his entire body quickly receded like a tide. Fang Chen was drenched in cold sweat and let out a long, turbid breath. Outside the bell, the 9 Nether Demon Venerable's grimly soft voice suddenly rang out. "Leave the ancient Chaos Blood Marquis to you. I will take him back to the Middle Dominion." The 9 Great Libationers were still struggling to hold back the blood spear as the Great Libationer from Taking Province shouted loudly, "Be careful." The 9 Nether Demon Venerable hesitated no longer, pressed a palm onto the immortal king's indestructible bell, and swiftly raced toward the Middle Dominion. As long as they returned to the Middle Dominion, the ancient Chaos Blood Marquis would not dare trespass. At most, he could tear through the world barrier and project power from across the worlds. But the instant he turned, the 9 Nether Demon Venerable's pupils suddenly shrank. Sometime during, the Middle Dominion behind him had vanished without a trace. Yes, the entire Middle Dominion world had completely disappeared. An illusion? No. The 9 Nether Demon Venerable's expression changed drastically, and he cried out involuntarily, "This is the Mirage Law of the Demon Mirage. Great Dream Demon Venerable, is that you?" To possess such ability, using a mirage to shield the perception of a second Calamity Realm expert like the 9 Nether Demon Venerable, there was only one. The Ancient Demon Realm's Great Dream Demon Venerable. In other words, Liu Baianhuang's father, that 3 Calamities realm powerhouse of the current era. He, too, had personally made a move to deal with Fang Chen. The mirage wavered violently, and a colossal, indistinct beast shadow slowly emerged. That giant beast spoke in human tongue, its voice icy and deep. "Fang Chen, you brat, release my son." Inside the bell, Fang Chen's heart lurched violently. The ancient demon mirage from years ago had actually arrived in its true form. Even if the ancient Chaos Blood Marquis had not come to kill today, this ancient demon mirage before them would never relent. Fang Chen flipped his hand to bring out the primordial heaven, imprisoning Gourd, and sensing the terrifying aura of the Great Libationers and the ancient Chaos Blood Marquis locked. In confrontation behind him, asked urgently, "If I release him, can you let us leave?" With a low hum, the surrounding scene transformed abruptly. The Middle Dominion that had just disappeared suddenly reappeared before their eyes. At the same time, a gargantuan insect, hundreds of zhang tall, reared up on its hind legs. Its entire body was covered in eyes on its neck, belly, and hundreds of legs, densely packed and jostling with eyeballs. Each eyeball exuded a Tao resonance that muddled the mind and beguiled the sight. And atop its head sat a pair of blood-red giant eyes, their gaze icy and cunning. The giant insect spoke human words, its tone crisp and decisive. Of course, this venerable came solely for my son, Liu Bianhuang. Release him, and the grudges between you and me will be wiped clean. A glint flashed in Fang Chen's eyes as he said in a deep voice, "Fine, it's settled. Come out." With a thought from Fang Chen, a wisp of green smoke drifted out from the primordial heaven, imprisoning Gourd and coalesced into the form of Liu Bianhuang. Liu Bianhuang looked around in slight bewilderment, and upon seeing that colossal figure, immediately let out a startled cry, "Father." He made to dart over, but Fang Chen suddenly pressed an evil sword against his neck and said coldly, "Who said you could leave?" The Nine Nether Demon Venerable gave a cold snort, one hand gripping Liu Bianhuang's crown, and said with sinister menace, "You've been suppressing your realm all along to participate in the primordial hunt. Otherwise you would have become a demon venerable long ago. Such an outstanding son. No wonder you came yourself, Great Dream Demon Venerable. If you don't want him dead, step aside. Once we're back in the Central Plains, we'll release him." A flicker of murderous intent flashed in the Great Dream Demon Venerable's blood, red eyes, tinged with a hint of hesitation. Seeing this, Fang Chen declared boldly, "If I wanted to kill Liu Bianhuang, he would have died long ago. Did you think I'd wait for you to rescue him? His life means absolutely nothing to me." Hearing these words, the Great Dream Demon Venerable finally shifted his colossal form aside and spoke in a deep, rumbling voice, "You'd best keep your word, otherwise you will surely regret it." Without further doubt, the Nine Nether Demon Venerable lifted the immortal King Indestructible Bell with one hand, and still pressing on Liu Bianhuang's crown with the other, soared into the Central Plains. Fang Chen turned back to see the skies, banning ring, jointly summoned by the Great Wine Sacrifice, and the blood, red long spear annihilating each other. Their collision unleashed a law shockwave, rivaling a tsunami. The shockwave blanketed the heavens and blotted out the sun, sweeping and radiating into every corner of the void. The sages of various worlds, watching from afar, all paled dramatically and frantically shielded their juniors as they fled in panic. Those who couldn't evade in time were swallowed on the spot, swept away into unknown depths of the void. Even the starry river, suspended around the battlefield, was blasted into reverse flow by the shockwave. Even the Central Plains world trembled faintly and shifted slightly. Fang Chen's pupils faintly contracted. The ripples from his duel with the young emperor were but a creek compared to this boundless ocean before him on an entirely different plane. Amid that cataclysmic shockwave, Fang Chen spotted the young emperor's figure. He still stood where he was, head tilted to the sky, a faint smile actually curling his lips, letting the shockwave engulf him. In an instant, he vanished within the ripples, dissolving into wisps of afterimages that scattered in all directions. He must have been reduced to ashes, right? Yet in Fang Chen's heart there was not the slightest joy, only a bone. Deep, crushing sorrow. If he had never appeared, perhaps neither the compassion mirror Great Venerable nor the young emperor would have perished. "Enough, you've reached the Central Plains. Now release my son." Within that terrifying shockwave, the Great Dream Demon Venerable simply conjured layer upon layer of mist, effortlessly isolating the impact, a stark revelation of his overwhelming might. Peering through the indestructible bell, Fang Chen looked around. They had indeed returned to the Central Plains. He could even see the Central Plains sages materializing from the void to greet them. The Nine Nether Demon Venerable swept his gaze across the surroundings, then with a flick of his finger, sent Liu Bianhuang flying back to the Great Dream Demon Venerable's side. Father, Liu Bianhuang, having barely escaped with his life, looked visibly shaken. Locked within the primordial heaven, imprisoning Gourd for so long, he had thought his death was certain, never expecting to see the light of day again. Recalling the misery of his capture by Fang Chen that day, his face instantly twisted with vicious fury, and he roared, "Father, I want to kill Fang Chen." A mocking gleam flickered in the Great Dream Demon Venerable's sanguine eyes. "I never intended to let him go either." But the Nine Nether Demon Venerable's expression shifted, a sinking dread gripping his heart. In the next instant, the surroundings underwent another violent transformation. They had clearly been in the Central Plains, yet now they found themselves back in the void, and drifting farther and farther from the Central Plains. The Nine Nether Demon Venerable exclaimed in a low, horrified voice, "You never lifted the mirage law. What we perceived was just another mirage you wove." The Great Dream Demon Venerable slowly narrowed his blood-red eyes, his chilling gaze locked dead onto Fang Chen. His resentful roar echoed repeatedly through the void. Gritting his teeth, the Demon Venerable bellowed, Fang Chen swindled my primordial hunt token back then, making me a laughingstock and forcing me to spend a colossal price just to purchase another. As if that wasn't enough, he captured my son during the primordial hunt, causing his elimination and costing my ancient demon realm the chance for a ceasefire. My ancient demon realm is still mired in war to this day. If he doesn't die, heaven itself will not tolerate it. The venom and hatred lacing those words were even more intense than that of the desperate Liu Bianhuang. Immediately, a murderous explosion flashed through his scarlet blood eyes as he thundered, "Human scum, your death day has come." Before the words faded, he prepared to unleash a world-annihilating extinction strike. Yet at this hair's-breadth moment, Fang Chen showed not a shred of panic. Instead, a bizarre, cold smirk crept across his face as he said heavily, "Is that so?" Without waiting for a reaction, Fang Chen's voice turned icy and he barked, "Then say goodbye to that precious son of yours first." H.M. A sudden lurch struck the great dream demon Venerable, a premonition of doom instantly shrouding his entire being. He whipped his head toward Liu Bianhuang on the other side, only to discover with horror that a beam, like chain, thin as spider silk, had somehow entwined around him. And the other end of that chain was silently stretching into the shadows behind the ancient bell at Fang Chen's back. It turned out that under the cover of that great bell, Fang Chen had secretly activated the primordial heaven, imprisoning Gourd long ago. He had anticipated that the great dream demon Venerable would never let things go, so he had prepared this contingency early on. Liu Bianhuang's pupils shrank abruptly as he gasped in terror and shrieked, "Father, save me." "Collect?" But the only reply was a merciless low command from Fang Chen's lips. The great dream demon Venerable's face contorted with shock and fury, letting out a thunderous roar. "Stop right there." Two streams of blood, red mist erupted from his eyes, instantly forming two sky-obscuring giant hands that grabbed firmly onto that intangible beam chain. The momentum of Liu Bianhuang being pulled into the gourd came to a grinding halt. But it was only a brief pause. As the primordial heaven, imprisoning Gourd's radiance, surged once more, the merciless chain forcibly dragged Liu Bianhuang, turning him into a wisp of smoke that shot into the gourd with a hiss. "You little beast, release my son." The great dream demon Venerable roared repeatedly, the terrifying sound waves imbued with three calamities realm power, making the immortal King I indestructible bell emit an urgent hum. Fang Chen felt his internal organs violently shake. With a thought, he instantly pushed his third domain to its limit, miraculously converting that devastating sonic attack into his own strength. Thus, his nearly exhausted divine transformation power, physical vitality, and even the void, flowing lightning force all recovered by a fraction. Sensing the shift in Fang Chen's aura, the great dream demon Venerable was even more enraged and alarmed. "Release him, right now, immediately, at once." Fang Chen gave a cold snort, casually shaking the gourd in his hand and threatening with an icy voice, "Take one more step forward, and I need only shake it again. Then this precious son of yours will have no burial place. Get the hell back now." The great dream demon Venerable had been driven to the brink of fury, solid killing intent radiating outward, but through the spatial rift, seeing the primordial heaven imprison gourd in Fang Chen's hand, he forcibly swallowed his rage. Yet letting Fang Chen leave just like that was absolutely impossible. Just as the deadlock intensified, a clear, rhythmic sound of hoofbeats eerily pierced through the heaven, filling thunderous roars, reaching everyone's ears with startling clarity. Gazing into that distance, they saw a divine snow-white warhorse, parting the layers of rolling shockwaves, galloping upon a wheel of crimson blood moon. Upon the saddle sat a towering figure wreathed in eerie black mist, clad in indestructible battle armor and masked with metal. The ancient black cloak behind him billowed and snapped in the fierce gale. His eyes, indifferent to the extreme, radiated a cold, disdainful divine light that looked down upon the world as if no one could match him. Fang Chen's heart and mind were struck by an unprecedented, violent impact. Chaos Ancient Blood Marquis. It was actually him, the Chaos Ancient Blood Marquis, who had left an indelible, terrifying impression on him. He had truly come, as promised, to claim his life. The great dream demon Venerable's pupils also shrank sharply, his expression full of dread. The Chaos Ancient Blood Marquis has always hunted only Sage Realm experts. Yet you, a mere divine transformation realm, are worthy of his personal pursuit. I truly wonder, what did you committed to provoke him to such a degree? Fang Chen's face darkened until it seemed as if water could drip from it. What else could he have done? It was merely that in the ruins he had not offered up his own head and the primordial command token as desired. He had merely used the soul, reaping brush to annihilate one of his projections. The blood character branded on his forehead was the hunting mark left by the true body crossing realms to pursue him. Watching the chaotic ancient blood Marquis charge over with murderous aura surging, Fang Chen's heart instantly leaped into his throat. Could those grand libation masters withstand this ferocious fiend? Under the horrified gazes of the crowd, the chaotic ancient blood Marquis shot forward like a bolt of black lightning, slashing through all defenses with irresistible momentum. That terrifying, oppressive force made even the sages hidden in the void feel suffocated. Could these grand libation masters of the central continent truly block this ancient being whose fearsome name shook the ages for 10,000 years? The Grand Libation Master of Taking Great Prefecture and the other 8 Grand Libation Masters quickly exchanged a glance, their expressions astonishingly calm. Strike. As the Grand Libation Master of Taking Great Prefecture fiercely flicked his horsetail whisk, the 9 acted as if their minds were linked, simultaneously launching their attacks. Behind them, the Merit Divine Steel thundered into manifestation, each guarded a direction, their auras interlinked, unexpectedly forming a profound formation. Golden light blazed from the Merit Divine Steel, merging and coalescing to condense in the void, a lifelike golden phantom towering 1,000 zhang high. Folds of its robes were clearly distinguishable, yet its face was utterly blurred, impossible to see. Those who obstruct this Marquis shall die without mercy. The chaotic ancient blood Marquis raised his hand and summoned a blood, red long spear into his grasp. Man and horse merged as one, transforming into a black stream of deathly light as he charged with ferocious intent. The 1,000 zhang golden phantom instantly formed hand seals. 9 differently colored rings of law materialized from thin air, then merged into one, erupting with heaven, destroying and earth-shattering might, blasting ruthlessly toward the chaotic ancient blood Marquis. Doom. A terrifying shockwave, far surpassing any previous collision, erupted with the force of crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. The entire void space quaked violently, as if the apocalypse had descended. Fragments of materialized law chains shot out madly in all directions like a tsunami. Even ordinary sages, let alone the great dream demon sovereign, felt a jolt of terror, his expression solemn to the extreme. He muttered in shock and uncertainty, what exactly is the background of these 9 grand libation masters of the central continent? They can actually fight the Blood Marquis, one of the 7 chaotic ancient Marquises, to a standstill. He decisively unleashed vast law power, forming a dense, misty shroud before him to barely repel those law chain fragments. Even so, he felt extreme strain. His colossal form, along with the law mist, was forced back repeatedly by the shockwaves. The Netherworld Demon Sovereign saw this, his pupils constricted sharply, and he cursed inwardly. Immediately protecting Fang Chen, he swiftly fled toward the central continent's border. Since the Grand Libation Masters were holding back the chaotic ancient Blood Marquis, their safe retreat to the central continent was now beyond doubt. The Great Dream Demon Sovereign instantly detected their movements. A glint of fierce killing intent flashed in his eyes, but when he noticed the primordial heaven, imprisoning D in Fang Chen's hand, his face showed hesitation. In that brief moment of hesitation, the Netherworld Demon Sovereign had already carried Fang Chen to the airspace above the central continent. The chaotic ancient Blood Marquis, of course, also realized Fang Chen was about to escape. If he truly escaped back to the central continent, killing him would become more difficult than ascending to heaven. He abruptly locked his icy killing intent onto the Great Dream Demon Sovereign, coldly stating, "If you dare let him return to the central continent, this Marquis shall surely take your life." The Great Dream Demon Sovereign's face drastically changed. Even within the same 3 disasters realm, differences in strength are as vast as heaven and earth. Beings like the 7 chaotic ancient Marquises, who have existed since ancient times, are not something the newly ascended 3 disasters cultivators can compare to. But if he forcibly intercepted Fang Chen, the latter would surely kill his only son immediately. In his entire life, what he treasured most was his sole son, Li Yubian Huang. Gritting his teeth, the Great Dream Demon Sovereign stared fixedly at the backs of the 9 Grand Libation Masters, a ruthless glint flashing in his eyes, and decisively charged forward, carrying billowing miasmic barriers with him. He was not attacking Fang Chen personally. This way, he would not provoke him, and it should not be considered disobeying the chaotic ancient Blood Marquis's order, right? The 9 Grand Libation Masters being simultaneously attacked from both front and back by 2 powerhouses of the 3 disasters realm, the outcome was self-evident. A heaven-shaking, earth-shattering roar echoed as the 1,000 zhang golden phantom shattered in an instant. With disdainful gaze, the chaotic ancient blood marquis charged through on his steed above a blood moon, piercing straight through the Grand Libation Master's formation, and drove his long spear directly toward Fang Chen. At this moment, Fang Chen had already arrived above the central continent. The entrance where the world barrier had opened was clearly visible beneath his feet. With just a single thought, they could successfully return to the central continent. However, at that very moment, a terrifying killing intent completely locked onto him. The blood character on his forehead suddenly erupted with mad flashes, as if it would sear through his entire body. Fang Chen turned back in horror, only to see the chaotic ancient blood marquis astride his white, boned warhorse, already charging right up to him. Those cold, emotionless eyes radiated absolute will of death. He murmured, "This marquis shall send you on your way now." The words had barely left his mouth when the blood-red long spear in his hand, carrying world-ending might, thrust viciously toward Fang Chen. This spear, condensing absolute lethal will, could only barely be resisted by the combined might of 9 Grand Libation Masters. What did Fang Chen, at this moment, have to block it? The immortal king indestructible bell shielding his body was the first to be pierced by that terrifying spear point. A sickening crackle of shattering rang out as the immortal king indestructible bell exploded, crumbling into countless fragments. This broken realm artifact from the heavenly realm was directly shattered under that single strike. The lethal spearhead, now unhindered, mercilessly thrust toward Fang Chen's vital point. All of this happened too fast, so fast it was suffocating. Not to mention the scattered 9 Grand Libation Masters, even the Netherworld Demon Sovereign, right next to him, felt his pupils constrict violently. He simply had no time to intervene. In fact, even if he had time, he would have been unable to block it. This lethal spear strike from the chaotic ancient blood marquis, how many in this world could withstand it? Time seemed to freeze completely in that instant. Everyone's heart stopped beating. Fang Chen, was he surely doomed to die? Yet, right as the long spear was but a foot away from Fang Chen, its sharp gleam about to claim his life, everything between heaven and earth was forcibly frozen. The chaotic ancient blood marquis remained in the posture of thrusting his spear. The Netherworld Demon Sovereign was frozen mid-gasp. The distant Grand Libation Masters were still dead in the moment of being scattered. Even the spreading tsunami of law chain fragments was utterly motionless. The entire world, save for Fang Chen, had fallen into a brief and eerie temporal stasis. Fang Chen had no time to ponder who had frozen this space-time, or for what reason. Instinctively, he wanted to teleport back to the central continent right before his eyes, but it was too late. That blood spear was right in front of him. Once the time freeze ended, its inherent destructive power could still blast him to death, even across half the world. He wanted to activate the seed of the 9 Hells Asura Emperor. If successful, he could turn the chaotic ancient blood marquis into a puppet. But that world-destroying spear, right before his eyes, would still pierce through his body first, completely erasing him. In this moment, how should he respond?